Hare Krishna. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Hope my timing is okay. It's been a while. I read the next few verses and took notes a long time ago. I hope they will come back to memory as I start reading them now. And I'm going to try and make this one as short as possible to respect the attention span of all of us. Got my big Bhagavad Gita home edition here. I love this thing. Join with me if you like. I'm just doing the first part still. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya. Is it Salakaya? Shalakaya? I think it's just the normal S. Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Let's do that one slowly. I really like that one. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya. Yep, there's a little sh in there. Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are continuing where we left off last time, which is 416. I should read at least the first word of the verse so I can remember it. Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction, and I shall now explain to you what these are, knowing which you shall be liberated from all sins. In my notes here, I wrote, sins can only come from karma, so we must simply understand karma. And then what I'm thinking now is don't hate the player, hate the game. So, and then again, if you don't even know the game, you can't even hate the game. So we have to start somewhere. In the purport, it says, or my notes about the purport is, religious principles can only be laid down by the Lord himself. I remember Prabhupada saying that. That's what Prabhupada says here. And then my purport to that is how to apply those principles according to time, place, and circumstance is our job. I have to stress that like 3 more times. That's that's why I write really simple notes like this. They're really dense, but it's actually all there. So what is a principle? A principle is even more foundational and important and general than a rule or a law. So rules and laws, like for instance, the 4 rules and regulations, that was what Prabhupada gave us. And, it's not exactly, like it's not taken directly from Shastra. There's not some prophecy in the Bhagavatam or something where it says, and then the Lord will send Prabhupada and he will tell them to chant exactly 16 rounds, for 15 was too small and 17 was too many. It's the principles that Prabhupada is following laid down by the Lord is there. He's basing it off of Shastra and the religious principles laid down by the Lord, but he is also making these rules and regulations that go along with time, place, and certain circumstance. So for him and his time and his guru, like 64 rounds was the deal. At least if you move into the temple, you're brahmachari. But he knew for many of his disciples, even 16 was maybe too much, but it was doable. He knew everyone, if they committed to making it a center mark, a cornerstone of their life, their daily life, they could make it work. And that's true. That's definitely true, even for grihastas. You can say it's hard. You can say you're not good at it, but can you say you don't have the time? You don't have 2 hours? Um, Actually, you can't really say that. You can, but what you're effectively saying is that there's something more important than intimate time with the Lord. Um, well, I mean, there's obviously exceptions, of course, to every rule. Like what I'm thinking of is like the CEO or lawyer, surgeon. You know, you have a job like that, you're working crazy hours, and then you come home and maybe your home life is miserable, and like I don't know, man, and you need that extra time to do something. I don't know, but even still, it's like I've had rough work weeks. I remember in China this happened before I was initiated. I All of a sudden I had to work at a whole new school, and so I had a whole new workload, and I couldn't. I struggled to do 16 rounds, so I stopped. I started doing 8 rounds instead, and that helped for like 2 weeks. It was like the right thing to do because I my work was suffering and the children were suffering, and then also it was bleeding into my bhakti as well, even the 8 rounds I would chant or whatever. So I caught up with my work, but then I still kept chanting eight rounds instead of 16, even though I didn't need to. And then there was a problem, and I started to feel like my life was empty and purposeless. And then I was like, oh, well, I should probably chant more. So then from that point on, I started chanting 16 again, and it was totally fine. Um, that's probably the only case in my life I can think of attachment to chanting. It's probably the only time in my life I've experienced that. Um, but anyway, yeah, the principles you don't change. So the four rules and regulations correspond to the four legs of the bull of Dharma. Like, what is it? Like auspiciousness, austerity, honesty, charity, something like that. And then, of course, there's the three gunas, and like sattva guna is the principle we should follow in all things. That's all. That's all true. This comes from the design of the Lord, and but yeah, we still need to be intelligent to apply those principles according to not just time, place, and circumstance. Like, oh, I'm in America, but who are you as an individual in your local area? What's right for that, you have to really use your intelligence for. And even your intelligence may not be enough. You may have to do trial and error. Um, but I always try to do intelligence first. Okay, 17, I have no notes on. There's a lot of these verses that are, well, let's just see what it is. The intricacies of action are hard to understand. Yeah, he's just repeating that verse just before it. He's just um, emphasizing that this is really important and hard to understand. So please listen, Arjuna. And in 18, we can transcend action by seeing action in action, action in inaction, and inaction in action. This one's a really wild, not wild, but really abstract. It's really hard to wrap your mind around. It reminds me of Tao Te Ching, the fundamental Taoist text by Lao Tzu. So many verses in Taoism that are just like this, like action and inaction, male and female, female and male, or whatever. Like it's it's deliberately riddling to the mind of how these contradictory things are true at the same time. In a sense, you're not really supposed to understand. It's like that on purpose. You're not supposed to actually like figure it out and then, oh, that's okay. That's like, it's good to stay confused for a long time on this one. And in the end of the verse, it says, although engaged in all sorts of activities. I think that's the key. whether you're offering the in-breath to the out-breath, or the out-breath to the in-breath, or the action is in action, or the inaction is in action, regardless of exactly what's happening. The yogi, what we're learning in chapter 2, 3, and 4, especially, is that he's engaging in his prescribed duties. Varnashram Dharma, Sanatan Dharma, Samanya Dharma, whatever Dharma he's doing, he's just doing it. That's his only right in life, is to be able to get to do that Dharma. So he just continues doing it. And some fruits come, some fruits don't come. Some are sweet, some are bitter, whatever. You just keep doing it. And that is actually what protects you from the bondage of it. So Eastern. I mean, like when I talk about this stuff, I have all these images and movies in my head of just normal Chinese people, just normal Asian people, just living their lives mostly unconsciously, but are actually following these principles very well without even realizing it. Whereas Western people, that's why I'm doing this, guys. That's why I'm reading and streaming and explaining this, is because even after reading Prabhupada, his Gita here, and then trying to understand it that way, and then listening to other people say, listening to me say it, it's like you still don't get it. You, even if maybe you understand it conceptually, great, but like putting it into practice and then committing to it, not just committing to it and like, oh, I'm doing it a lot, but like where it actually becomes your worldview, your grand narrative, your unconscious automatic ethos, which is what you see in the East. When you get to that point, then we're having fun. Then I can really party with you. That's what I'm working towards. My Eastern paradise in the West. I don't think it'll happen, but that's what I would like to see. Oh yeah, I forgot. In the verse 16, there was a cool word, purvataram. Maybe that was from the previous stream. Purva is like before, as in Purva Paksha, and the Purvatar is the person who came before, the ancestors. Um, so it's like whether you follow the Guru, you follow the Purvataram, the ancestors, the Shastra, God Himself, whatever. These fundamental principles are not up to any of us. You simply see them or you don't. And if you see them, you follow them and accept them, or you don't. That's really all that's up to us when it comes to principles. When it comes to the details and how to manifest those in this current lifetime in the best way possible, that is a totally different thing, which does require intelligence and action and fortune. You gotta have luck. You gotta have Lakshmi Devi on your side. Um, Prabhupada was a great pure devotee, great man, of course. But he also had, so much protection and luck. I mean, he came to America at the ideal time when everyone was just like begging for an old Indian man Swami to come. They were begging for him, and then he came right then at the right time. Um, that's not a coincidence. That's not an accident. That's not a, that this is it has to be there for a perfect manifestation in physical reality. All those little details have to be perfect. If you're a pure devotee, even if you're a pure devotee, if you're where you don't belong, if you're in the wrong time, place, and circumstance, um, you might get crucified. And that might be a very good thing. Lord Christ ki jai. But yeah, this is a physical world. It has rules. And once again, all the principles behind those rules, like the three modes, the five elements, and so on, that all comes from Krishna. It's all God's design. But how it manifests and that stuff is more, well, it's more mundane on the one end, and on the other end, it's more where we actually have exercise our free will. Um, so that's actually what I focus on when I study and practice the Gita. I don't like read these verses and go, "Oh, it's so amazing! Wow!" That's called being a sucker for the flowery language of the Vedas, which Krishna tells us to avoid. It's not that it's bad; it has its time and place. And then now, eventually, after doing this for a while, you get to the point where you're like, "Okay, I want to do it." Like action in inaction, inaction in action. How do I do that? How do I do that while I'm brushing my teeth, while I'm in judo class, while I'm teaching? And then within each of those different activities, there's a whole different set of details for different time, places, and circumstances. So that's actually my daily life is figuring out how to do these things in all those different details. And that's what I'd like to get into doing, but you know, got I first we've got to really stick with the Gita as much as possible. Once I get through the whole Gita, then maybe we'll go through a second time into more detail. Anyway, the purport to 418. Um, the word in the verse that's used is a karma. What does that actually mean? It means without reaction to work. And impersonalists do this. They cease fruitive activities out of fear. So you can still practice these principles in chapter 2, 3, and 4, these basic Dharma principles is how I'd call them. Karma, Dharma, similar. Um, as an atheist, as an impersonalist, theist, whatever, anyone can practice these and benefit from them. But there's a big difference between with why you're doing it. And because remember, we're talking about consciousness all the time. That's the name of the game here. And so and what Prabhupada says in the purport here is that these impersonalists, their fundamental motivation for escaping bondage and seeking liberation and all this stuff, it's actually just fear. It's like, well, what if I don't do that? Then I'll still be in bondage. And this makes perfect sense. Although I got to say, it's one of the many times where I feel like, wow, Prabhupada's being pretty harsh, pretty strong with the impersonalists, but he has to. I mean, I think not just from his, perspective or whatever, but it's part of his job as this kind of Bhaktivedanta Swami Acharya is he has to go hard on certain things like impersonalism and maybe Sahajiaism too. But the main thing, yes, Mayavada. Um, that's the main enemy that Prabhupada talks about again and again. And it can seep right into even among devotees, we can. I don't know. I mean, speaking personally, I just don't see actually how that would happen like for me because I have faith. I don't know how like I can study impersonal things like psychology or philosophy or something, but just then and then but from going from there to like the logical jump of well, Krishna's just energy. It's like I don't know how you can actually study all this stuff and practice it and get successful with it and then like get all impersonal. Like I don't actually know how that happens. I think that's a beginner problem. I'm not sure. I don't mean beginner in time. I mean beginner in adhikari. Anyway, the devotees, they act from a different intention. They know of their eternal position as servants of Krishna, and that brings them immunity to fear and the wrong intention and also getting caught too much in bondage. And 19. One is understood to be in full knowledge whose every act is devoid of desire for sense gratification. So key. And His fruitive action is burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. Notice what Krishna says here, especially how Prabhupada translates it, that it's not just that your senses don't enjoy anything anymore. You're not becoming a robot. It's that the desire for gratifying the senses, that desire is no longer there. And because the desire is no longer there, there's no karma. It doesn't matter if you go, wow, that was a great cake, or that was a bad cake. It doesn't matter. It's already gone. Even before you digested it, the karmic reaction and significance of it is just nothing. It's just not there. So long as you don't have a desire, even a very latent, subtle desire, if it's not there at all, then there is a karma, no reaction to those works. In my notes here, I said, one who is determined to be devoid of kama, K-A-M-A, kama. This person is declared a pundit by the Buddha. These are the words Krishna uses, a pundit. He's a knowledgeable person. He's a pundit, and he's declared those by the Buddha. Buddhas, by those who know, those who have real spiritual knowledge. Buddhas. Jnana Agni Dagda. This is a phrase in here I've really liked. That's the one that talks about perfect knowledge lights the burning fire. Jnana Agni Dagda. So knowledge, fire, burning. That's the literal translation. Knowledge, jnana, agni, fire, dagda, burning. So the fire burns from this. The fire burns up the karma because of this perfect knowledge. I like how it sounds too. Jnana, agni, dagda. And in the purport, jnana refers to knowledge of the eternal relationship, eternal servitorship, which goes back right to the previous verse. And in a quote here in the purport, such a fire once kindled can burn up all kinds of karmic reactions. Well done. On to number 20. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertaking. Okay, the most striking word there to me is independent. And I believe that is the word nirashrayaha, without any center. Inactivity, in karmani, inactivity. So independent doesn't mean I'm a strong, independent woman. Look how many men I sleep with. It's not that kind of independence. Krishna is talking about being independent of karmani, being your center is not in karma anymore. You are independent from the karma. Even though you're doing the karma, you're independent from the karma. That's what independence refers to here. And that's the first thing I wrote in my notes here. Nirashraya karmani, without any center, inactivity, meaning independent of karma. And this comes from tyaktva. This is once again the word in the verse that Krishna uses. Tyaktva means giving up all attachment to fruitive results. Nakaroti, doesn't do anything, although simultaneously is fully engaged in all kinds of undertakings. Nirashraya karmani. And in the purport, I wrote here, a Krishna Bhakta is not even attached to personal maintenance, basic personal bodily maintenance. All that is left to Krishna. They are a karma. Okay, now I should caveat that. It doesn't mean that it certainly can happen though, where you're in a trance and you're just like, well, I guess I brushed my teeth and I didn't even notice. Even if you're not a devotee, that can happen to you. You just get unconscious and basic maintenance will just happen without you doing anything to it. Um, but when I say it's all left to Krishna, and I'm also not saying that like you don't work, that you can just be totally lazy. It's that your center, once again, going back to the verse, Nirashraya, you're independent of the need to personally maintain anything, really. You do it because it's just another dharma that you do, but there's no karma from it. Because what a Krishna Bhakta is doing is bhakti. So there's no karmani. He is nirashraya karmani. They're a karma without reactions. Any other action is binding, and that is the real aspect of vikarma. And vikarma means forbidden work or forbidden karma. All right, well, I said I would be shorter than usual, so this is definitely where I'm going to have to stop it. And I already went longer than I wanted to, so I'm happy about that, even though I'm still exiting off shorter than usual. Very good. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sri Gurudev Ki Jai. Sri Bhagavan Ki Jai. Haribo.